Hello and welcome to Cryptid by State, Delaware. After being forced to take a week off due to bad weather, family events, and power outages, I have returned with another entry in our Cryptid by State series. This state received an astounding amount of votes, and after investigating what cryptids call this area home, I can certainly see why this location was so popular. So, without dragging this out, join me as we continue our cryptid family road trip, where we are leaving our previous location of Georgia and heading a short distance northward to Delaware. Delaware has some fascinating and tumultuous history behind it, but at the same time it is fairly straightforward. Originally the area was inhabited by quite a few Native American tribes, such as the Nanticoke, the Susquehanna, the Iroquois, and the Lenni Lenape, who are also known as the Delaware. In 1609, famed English explorer Henry Hudson traveled the coastline, which included Delaware Bay. Then in 1631, the Dutch ventured to the land and established the first European settlement named Zwanendale, near the present-day city of Lewis. This would not last long, since within a year's time all the settlers were killed off during a dispute with the Native Americans. Following this, in 1638, a Swedish man named Peter Minuit established a settlement in what is now Wilmington. This location was called New Sweden, and it boasted a trading post as well as a defensive position known as Fort Christina. This location was very successful and remained as such for 17 years, until in 1655 when the Dutch would return under the command of Peter Stuyvesant and take over the colony. A few years after, England took an interest in the area and decided to stake their claim. In 1664, Sir Robert Carr defeated the Dutch under the orders of James, the Duke of York, who was the brother of King Charles II. This in turn would be considered part of New York under the name of James's New York Colony. William Penn from Pennsylvania would then throw his hat into the ring when he expressed his want to have land that would provide an outlet to the sea. James would agree to this wish by leasing William a portion of land that was on the western shore of the Delaware Bay. This tract of land would be called the Lower Counties on the Delaware, but this arrangement would eventually turn into a legal matter. A battle would begin over who actually owned the land, and this argument lasted over 100 years, and even involved the heirs of both Penn and the other claimant, Cecil Calvert, the second Baron of Baltimore. Finally, with the creation of the Mason-Dixon line, the dispute was ended. For the most part. We are all aware, being this area was one of the original 13 colonies, that it played an important role in the American Revolution, although only one battle actually took place on its soil. What makes this state so great is that it was actually the very first area to ratify the Constitution on December 7, 1787. As such, it is known as the first state. Delaware has a very interesting flag, and it was utilized all through the state's history, but it wasn't officially adopted until July 24, 1913. I couldn't find why a yellow diamond pattern was used in the center, but its color, which is called buff, along with the blue, which personally looks green to me, was said to represent the colors of General Washington's uniform. Under the diamond is the date in which the area became a state. In the center is the coat of arms. I'll try to get through these quickly. At the top is a ship representing the state's coastal commerce as well as its shipbuilding industry. On the right is a militiaman, which represents the importance of the citizen soldiers in keeping the area free. On the left is a farmer, which stands for the importance of agriculture. The sheaf of wheat and maize both represent the same principles of the importance of farming. Below this is water, which symbolizes the important Delaware River. Under this is an ox that indicates how important livestock was to the state. Finally, under all of this is the state's motto of liberty and independence. Okay, after all that, I hope you're ready for these cryptids. Let's start our investigation with a real mystery that seems to have an easy explanation, but not really. This would be the creature known as the Selbyville Swamp Monster from the Great Cypress Swamp, otherwise known as Burnt Swamp. I will jump ahead here and work backwards. In the 1960s, reports started to flood in from people claiming to have seen or heard a strange hairy beast roaming about the swamp. Descriptions varied greatly, and it appeared that no one actually was able to get a real good look at the creature, even though there were reports of the beast jumping in front of people's vehicles as they traveled down the road. These sightings were fairly frequent for a period of many months, and due to the popularity, it brought many hunting parties out in search of the beast. It wouldn't be until 1987 when two men named William Fred Stevens and his friend, who was a reporter named Ralph Grapperhaus, admitted that they were responsible for the sightings. Fred claimed that he used his Aunt Dorothy's raccoon fur coat, along with other items, and would terrorize the neighborhood. In return, it would give his friend Ralph interesting stories to print in the local newspaper. Fred stated that they eventually stopped playing this prank when they realized all the hunters coming to the area may accidentally shoot somebody. You may be wondering, why am I including this hoax on this list? Well, things may not be as cut and dry as you may assume. Sightings of this creature date back to the early 1920s, which is way before Fred was even born, and other reports have emerged long after the two men had perpetuated the hoax. As stated, in 1920, two raccoon hunters were out in the swamp one night when they realized that they were the ones being hunted. During their trek, they were overcome with an eerie feeling when they noticed that their hunting dogs were suddenly frozen in place with their tails tucked between their legs and refused to continue moving forward. Not long after, they heard an unearthly deep scream coming from the dense forest. The hunters, not wanting to hang around, turned and started to run away. The whole time they kept hearing the scream, and also the sound of something very heavy stomping on the ground and snapping tree branches as it went. More reports would emerge when, after a drought in the 1930s, the swamp caught fire, giving it its name of Burnt Swamp. I have found that there are claims that this creature is not something to mess with, since it is said to be responsible for killing pets and livestock. If that wasn't bad enough, people who go missing in the swamp are thought to be the victims of this beast. Along with this, there are claims of people seeing ghosts and even spirit lights hanging around the swamp. Jumping from one strange, unique cryptid, we now find a being simply known as a deer man. Sightings of similar creatures have been seen all over, including other states. This version reminds me a bit of a possible skinwalker. The sighting comes from Huckasson and occurred in 1993. A boy who was 8 years old was staying at his grandparents' house, which was located deep within the forest. He stated that they always had an eerie feeling, like something was watching them while outside. While sleeping in bed, he awoke one morning to the sight of what appeared to be a deer with enormous antlers pushing his face against the window. It seemed to be trying to get a look into the house. As the boy watched, it reared up on its hind legs and suddenly changed its shape in one fluid motion to that of a man. He stated that it wasn't his grandfather pulling a prank on him, as the silhouette was that of a young man and was muscular. The being stood there for a while with its head angled to the side. Finally, it lost interest and ran away with purpose. Now in his mid-30s, he frequently wondered if the sighting was simply part of his imagination, but that hope quickly faded away when he recalled the terror he felt at the sight of the being changing its shape. I think this would be the best place to talk about another creature, although its main sightings were in Wisconsin. This cryptid is simply known as the Monster of 76. During that year, farmers would find that something had attacked their cattle in the middle of the night. Although, while many animals may eat its victims, or in the cases of most cryptids, drain them of their blood, this one had very peculiar habits. The bodies of the cows would be found intact, but when inspected, they were found to have bruising around their necks, indicating that they had been strangled. That would be quite a feat for any being to accomplish. The creature was seen on a few occasions, and it was described as standing over 12 feet tall, was completely hairless, had gray skin, massive arms, slender legs, and 2 large eyes in its head. I don't know if this could be a different version of an unknown alien race, or maybe even the Grafton Monster from West Virginia, although that being didn't have a pronounced head. Our next creature tends to blur the lines between spirit and cryptid, but I may have found another report that firmly places it in the flesh and blood category. Along Highway 12 between the towns of Frederica and Felton, there have been sightings of a being simply known as the fence rail dog. It is said to be completely black in color, has red glowing eyes, a long bushy tail, resembles a wolf, is 10 feet long, and is 4 feet tall. That last attribute is where the name comes from, since it is said to stand as tall as the top of a fence rail. It is worth noting that some have stated that it actually resembled an extremely large hyena. Many sightings of this dog occurred when it is either foggy, rainy, or just before a storm. Most accounts state that it is seen as being neither aggressive or passive. On many occasions, witnesses reported seeing it standing by the road just watching traffic go by, while others tell tales of the dog actually chasing their car and managing to keep up regardless of the speed. What really makes this odd is that it appears to have the ability to vanish from sight, almost like it was a spirit. Now, there are many legends all over the world of different types of spectral black dogs, and there are even trucker tales of black dogs that chase or run in front of their trucks, only to vanish. However, in doing some digging, I found an article that may tie with this lore, and there are even pictures to prove it. On July 13, 2017, a person who wished to remain anonymous sent in a video and pictures of an odd creature they saw while walking in the woods around Newcastle County, which, I should note, is right around Kent County, where Highway 12 is. On that day, around 8:51 in the morning, a woman was enjoying being in the forest when she heard the sound of a deer huffing. As she followed the sound, she was startled to find an animal of a totally different type lying on the forest floor. She claims that what she saw was a dog man and that it kept staring at her. In that moment, she knew she needed to capture some footage of it so people would believe her story. However, she stated that she immediately was overcome with a sense of dread when she encountered the beast. I should be showing you the image she captured. Now, at first glance, you are probably thinking what I was, that it was possibly a black panther. It very much looks like one, even though they aren't known to be found in Delaware. Although this image, which has had its background removed, troubles me with that theory. Those ears and head shape certainly look like a dogman style. Yet, after our previous story of the fence rail dog, the size of this creature, and being it was fairly close to the same location, I have to entertain the idea that they may be one and the same. Our final cryptid sort of ties in with the previous story, but only by a little bit. This one was seen on July of 2007 near the Broadkill Beach area, and is known as the Prime Hook Swamp Creature. At around dusk, a woman named Helen and her daughter were driving down Broadkill Road, which passed by a swamp. As they traveled, they saw a creature standing on the road that was said to be 2 to 3 feet tall, appeared to weigh around 30 pounds, had long legs, short ears, its fur was a tan color, had a long tail, and its face was flat, almost reminiscent of a pug. Oddly enough, this wasn't the first time the woman had seen this creature, since it ran out in front of her car the year prior. The pair stopped at a local store and asked the clerk if anyone had reported seeing the thing before. The clerk said she didn't know what it was, but that she had seen it before while out on her dirt bikes with her dad. She went on to say that very few people have actually seen it, but it is known to exist and is very elusive. So, it is at this point that I'm very curious if any of my viewers have actually ever seen this creature before. While Helen provided a decent description, I would like to know more details. Mainly, was it shaped like a cat, a monkey, or something completely different? Maybe one of you will be able to help me out with those details. As usual, I couldn't talk about every cryptid in this state, so here is the honorable mentions section. Not shockingly, but Delaware is said to be home to a population of Bigfoot, much like every state so far. Another cryptid I talk about frequently is the Dogman, and they have been seen here as well. I mention this even though I did talk about one previously, but that version was more questionable as to what it was. For our next creature, I know that they are frequently considered a spirit, but some tales talk about a flesh and blood being. This would be the state's very own version of a Wendigo, which goes by the name of Mui. Panthers have been reported by many individuals, even though the wildlife commissions state that they don't exist. There are rumors of the ever-popular Pukwudgie making this state its home as well. Finally, I kept hearing murmurs of a river monster in the state known as Desi, but I couldn't find any eyewitness reports. So I'll keep the creature here, but for the time being, there isn't any information about it. At least that I could find. So as I end this, I hope you enjoyed it, and that I made my Delaware viewers proud. It is really amazing how such a small state has so many cryptids roaming about, and not to mention how unique many of them are. Now, it is at this point that I must inform you of some changes possibly coming in the future. On Friday, I will be starting a 4 to 5 week period of my normal job, where my hours will be sort of crazy. Typically, when this happened in the past, I would be forced to refrain from uploading anything to my channel for that period of time, simply due to me not having enough free time. Although I intend on doing something a bit different and sort of a compromise. Since my time will be limited for about a month, I'm planning on uploading on a bi-weekly schedule until the end of the job. This more than likely means that my content will basically consist of only Cryptid by State and Cryptid by Region videos. This is the plan, but I can't guarantee anything until I see how things go. I am sorry for this change, and I apologize for doing this. Rest assured this will only be temporary, and I will be looking forward to getting things back to normal afterwards. Even as such, remember to keep voting for which state you would like to see next. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you share my videos with someone you know who may enjoy this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.